Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, everybody. Today we have Mazi Robinson on, and she is a licensed professional counselor out of Atlanta. And she really specializes in helping women just discover their true voice when they navigate all the issues that are going on in our life right now. So, welcome to the show today, Mazi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting with y'all.
Uh, yeah, there's so much going on in our
Yeah.
lives, and we hear from so many women about just how kind of these transitions in this time of life just take them by surprise. What are some things that you can address when someone comes into you saying, I don't know what to do right now?
Yes, I think there are, I think midlife takes a lot of us by surprise, because it's something that everyone moves through midlife and there's just so little information or guidance on it. I think that is changing. I think we're seeing more and more about midlife and perimenopause and menopause being talked about in the media, which is excellent. But just traditionally speaking, we don't really hear a lot about women and midlife. And, if you want to dig deep for a second, all of the research ever done on midlife was done on men, not on women. And it is a vastly different experience for a variety of reasons. And so I think a lot of women are surprised by the emotional changes that we experience in midlife, the emotional fluctuations. The dark cloud that can kind of descend. And if you've never had an inclination towards feeling down or depressed or sad, it can kind of be shocking that, oh my goodness, I'm having all of these negative thoughts and I'm doubting myself and all of my relationships, and where did this come from? I think we can be surprised at how anxiety inducing this stage of life is, again, for a variety of reasons. There's, internal changes going on, but there are so many external changes in our lives, in our relationships, in our families, both extended and immediate, in our careers. If you think about it, in this stage of life, there is not one single area of your life that is not impacted. Your body's impacted, your health is impacted. If you're married, your marriage is going to be impacted. If you have kids, your kids are rapidly changing. And so that relationship and also that role is impacted. If in your career, in this stage of life, there's a lot of changes. You may feel that you're on the fast track. You may feel plateaued and stagnant. In your extended family, there are going to be vast changes, which can be a combination of terribly sad and so much loss and incredibly frustrating. I'm sure we can all share stories, nightmare stories of extended family ruptures and conflict, related to the loss of a parent, settling of the estate, and all those things. And so they're just, I don't think that we're prepared for how much just the wheels can feel like they're coming off the car when we hit midlife. We're you just a lot there are many other life stages that get a lot more airtime than midlife. And so I think we're better prepared for that. But yeah, I think we can be surprised by all that we experience in this season of life.
I think when you talk about all of these external factors that are changing, women feel so unstable.
Yeah,
And then you factor in the fact that we have been told that we should not put ourselves as a priority. S-
right.
So they walk into your office, life is changing faster than they can watch it. They don't know what to do, but to say, "Oh, I need to take care of myself first," is so against what we have been trained to think. How
Yes.
do women start? What do you say to them is like the first step towards feeling a little more secure in their life?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And you're right. There is so much socialization that we've experienced traditionally and historically around being nurturers, being caretakers. And again, this may be part of your natural personality, and there's a nurture bent to it. Um, and so, we're just trained from an early age to read the room and take the temperature and calibrate ourselves accordingly and anticipate needs, and we are, what is modeled for us and what is often directly taught to us is that is how we show love. And I do think women are wired to be more relational, and I think we're socialized to be more relational. But the big question in that is, how do I not lose the me within the we, right? And that question gets louder in our minds when we hit midlife. And so then it's shouting like, I've lost the me within the we. I've lost the me within the we. And we can feel panicked, we can feel anxious, we can feel sad, we can feel resentful. And so one of the things, and I talk about this a lot with clients, one of the things that I will encourage clients to do is, let's just start at the beginning. And it sounds so elementary and so basic, but what do you like? Like, literally make a list of what you like and make a list of what you don't like. I like Hershey bars, but I do not like Three Musketeers. Like, really, really small things, because it is reawakening that self-awareness of what I like and what I don't like. And then that's going to build into what I need and what I want. And that's going to build into, what do I really need? What needs are not being met? Because I think for a lot of women, they recognize I'm feeling anxious, they recognize I'm feeling resentful, but they do not have the awareness or the vocabulary to fully verbalize, it's because of this. It's this need that's not being met, because we have so stuffed our needs in service to being caretakers and nurturers that I don't I don't even know what is not being met, but I know I'm on fire with resentment. And so really helping women to just start at the beginning of, what do you like? What do you not like? All right, let's move it up from there. What do you want? What do you need? And then building that self-awareness, and then from there learning to communicate that to the people that we love, and then from there learning to communicate it with the people who are capable and willing to meet those needs in our lives. Because we may have a handful of people in our lives that we love, and we're not going to get rid of them, but they just aren't willing or capable to meet those needs. So we have to then find people who are able to meet those needs that we have identified that are not being met.
That's so funny, because that was going to be my question as well. How do you get everybody else on board, in your family? Because sometimes you've forgotten even what you liked. Like,
Yes.
because you've been serving so many other people that you've forgotten what made you happy. Just like you said, the Hershey bar and the Three Musketeers, you may have said, well, gosh, my family prefers three musketeers.
Right.
Yeah. And you forgot how much you're like, I really didn't even like those in the first place. But that was, yeah, such a
Right,
good
exactly.
way.
Think of how many women women our age that that never eat the pizza they like,
Oh,
because
yeah.
their family likes pepperoni, sausage, and mushroom or whatever. And they never get the pizza they like, because it is just like, it's fine. I can do pepperoni, sausage, and mushroom. It's fine. Meanwhile, the pizza of your dreams is like artichokes and spinach and feta cheese with a pesto sauce, and you never get that pizza, because yeah. And so you just lose touch with what it is that you really like and want and need. And to what you were saying there at the beginning, I do think, figuring out what we like, want, and need, that can kind of be fun, maybe even interesting. But where the hard work hits us is figuring out where we can get those needs met. And that does often involve some surrender, surrendering of expectations of who we want people to be in our life, surrendering expectations of who we think they are. And that practice of radical acceptance of, you are not capable or willing of being this person for me. And again, that doesn't mean that I have to end the relationship. It just means that I have to recalibrate my expectations. I can't, one of my favorite sayings is, are you going to the hardware store looking for bread? And I think a lot of women go to the hardware store looking for bread, and because they're like, I'm such a faithful customer to the hardware store, so don't you want to have bread for me? You know, and but the hardware store doesn't sell bread. And it doesn't matter, how many times you talk to the manager, it doesn't matter the ruckus you throw. They are never going to sell bread. They sell a bunch of other things which are handy and neat, but they're never going to sell bread. And that's the case, I think, with a lot of our relationships, that we think, well, if I love you and if I meet your needs and anticipate your needs, then surely you will love me back. And surely you will love me in that same way back. And you'll anticipate my needs, and I'll never have to tell you what I need, and you'll mind read me, and we'll just indirectly communicate for the rest of
Good
our
luck
life.
with that fantasy, because I don't know anybody who's ever had that happen.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right. But I
yeah.
think a lot of us buy into the myth that if I do everything for you and take care of you, then you will love me back and meet my needs. And some people, again, are just unwilling or incapable of meeting certain needs. And we do have to have that hard reckoning with ourselves of, am I going to the hardware store looking for bread? Am I asking for something from this person that they are just not capable or willing to give me? And it doesn't mean my need is wrong. It doesn't mean my need is too much. It means that I'm looking in the wrong place. So I have to look someplace else.
Right. And
And
you were saying, oh, not ending, it doesn't necessarily mean ending the relationship.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
just that radical acceptance and recalibrating those expectations of that person, of that relationship.
radical acceptance is not an easy thing to do, especially when you've spent so many years thinking, I'm putting my heart and soul into this. At what point, what if you simply cannot accept that? What if you can't accept that the person, because I know for women in midlife, we kind of step into our own voice as we
Yes.
start to get older. And maybe what you accepted before, you no longer want to accept. What would you say to women in that instance?
I honestly think, relationally speaking, that is the midlife transition. It is that journey right there. It is recognizing I accepted this previously in my life for perhaps the last 2 or 3 decades of my life, and this behavior was fine, and I rationalized it, or I didn't even see it. I didn't, it even register to me that maybe this wasn't great or healthy. But now I have on a new pair of glasses, and I see this behavior, I see this habit, I see this pattern of interaction with this person. I see it differently, and it is no longer acceptable to me. And that's where, that journey of awareness can be hard. That journey of awareness can be hard on our relationships, because you've done the waltz for 2 to 3 decades with certain people, or more than that, and then you're like, whoa, I actually don't like the waltz. And then they're like, no, 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 but we're going to keep doing the waltz. And so, there's some headbutting there of shifting those relationships. And I think there's also loss and grief there of the potential of maybe losing some connections that were built on those old habits and patterns. And that's just not who you are anymore, but you love that person. But can that person accept that that's not who you are anymore? So there's loss and grief that we have to feel as we move through that. But yes, related but separate, radical acceptance of, this is who this person is, and they are not going to change. And for me to keep beating my head up against the wall, I'm the only one being injured. They are not being injured by me trying to get them to be what I want them to be, what I think they would be better, being. That radical acceptance. It is so, so hard, but truly it is one of the most self-compassionate things that we can do for ourselves. And I think that's a great way to think about radical acceptance, is it is an act of self-compassion to say, I am going to stop going to go with my little analogy. I'm going to stop going to the hardware store. I'm really hungry. And I'm going to go find where they actually sell bread rather than staying hungry, continuing to ask where the bread is, right?
So if that, that happens, and it depending on what the relationship is, it could be your spouse, it could be an extended family member, it could be a sibling. When you are doing that radical acceptance, and they might be doing a behavior that is, I don't know, mentally abusive, what are some things that someone can do to say, okay, I'm accepting that's how you are. I'm not going to change what you're doing to me. What can I do to protect myself?
Yeah, great question. And so I think this is, the natural answer to that is what are the boundaries you need to put in place? We often think, well, I'm putting boundaries in place so that you will change, but boundaries are not about the other person. Boundaries are for us. They are meant to protect our worth and well-being. And as a result, we are often the ones that have to change when we put boundaries in place. So, the example I always give, a boundary is not you have to stop drinking. A boundary is it is your choice if you drink. I would like for you not to drink. I feel unsafe when you drink too much. But I can't control whether or not you drink. And so then the boundary is, so as a result, I'm going to start driving my car to dinner. And it is your choice if you drink, but I'm going to have my car. And so this is why, we hear a lot about boundaries, but actually boundary setting is really hard. It takes a lot of internal work because it does require you to change your behavior, because it's not about their behavior. It is, what do I need to do to keep myself to keep myself grounded, to keep myself regulated, to keep myself who I want to be. For a lot of us, we recognize, oh my goodness, I've turned into this angry, resentful person who is just hot, hot flashes, but who's just like on fire all the time. And that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And then it is up to us to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to protect myself from getting to this level of escalation? And so setting boundaries, identifying, again, going back to needs, identifying what needs aren't being met. A lot of our frustration that we feel in relationships is because needs aren't being met. And so what are those needs that are not being met? I'm a big fan of having a plan. When we don't have a plan, we are more likely to react. And so then we're more likely to have those reactions that then we feel bad about, or we feel guilty about, or it just escalates the pattern of the relationship and we end up in greater conflict. And so I'm a big fan of having a plan. I'm a big fan of having a plan. So if you're going into a dinner, or we're coming up on the holidays, if you're going into the holidays and that this person that you're having dinner with or your family can just really activate you. They can light a match and pour gasoline in like no time. The best thing that you can do for yourself, you might choose to not go to the dinner, and that is your choice. But in the real world, I think, sorry, now I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent.
That's good. That's fine. Yeah.
I think one of my complaints about social media and it's wonderful that we have so much about mental health and self-help on social media. That's great. But one of my complaints is that too often the advice we see about toxic relationships or boundaries is just leave, just leave, just leave. And yes, there are so many relationships in which we do need to leave. And the reality is there are so many relationships in which we either cannot leave or we don't want to leave. And we recognize that it's toxic. And so in the real world, you do have to figure out, okay, if I'm not able or I don't want to end this relationship, then how do I survive in the relationship? And so having that plan of, okay, what is it exactly that they do that can activate me? What are the signs that I am starting to escalate internally? My stomach starts to clench. I get hot. I start clenching my fist. I start to feel my heart starts to race, like really getting clear on what are the signs when I am starting to get flooded and triggered by this person. And then what am I going to do once that starts happening? Because removing ourselves from the situation is the best thing we can do to then lower that anxiety response. And so I'm going to say I need to go to the restroom, or I'm going to say I need to get up and check on the kids, or I'm going to go in the kitchen, right? And having a plan. And I think also kind of rewinding before that, having a plan of, okay, when I arrive, I'm going to talk to this person first. I think just having a plan for these isolated incidences can be extremely helpful when we are dealing with people that we find challenging and activating. And then I can have some other thoughts, but I'll just stop there.
I think that's great though, because I think
No,
that's such good
definitely.
advice. I mean, because like you said, especially with the holidays and some things are unavoidable. You can't say to somebody, I don't want you to see that person anymore, because like you said, that's their choice if they want to speak to that person
Right.
again. So you gotta accommodate,
I think,
navigate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think along those lines, when talking about the midlife transition, women are starting to recognize their self-worth, which I
Yes.
don't think was on the list of to-dos for a long time. And
Yeah.
as they're developing a sense of self-worth, it's so delicate and vulnerable. How can we communicate that to other people who are used to us acting a certain way, but now all of a sudden we're saying, I deserve better. I need to set these boundaries. And people are like, whoa, who's that? That's not the Jane I used to know. How do you communicate to people that I'm in this transition and I'm setting these boundaries for myself, not to change our relationship?
Mm-hmm. I think one, you communicate with the people who are the safest. Um, and so Brene Brown has a saying that you communicate with the people who've earned the right to hear. And so you communicate with the people who have earned the right to hear, who've earned the right to hear about your current journey, who've earned the right to hear what you're realizing and what you're noticing and seeing and feeling for the first time, or getting clear that you're seeing and feeling. And that's going to be a very small number of people in your life, tiny. And you can communicate to that to those, you can communicate all of that to those people. But I think in general you actually don't have to communicate to anyone how you're changing. You can just let your behavior speak for itself. And can you bring the casserole that you always bring this year? No, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that this year. You can be nice and polite, but you don't have to explain why you're not bringing the casserole. You don't have to explain that it actually takes 8 hours to prepare that thing, and you don't have time, and you're tired, and you're spending your 8 hours. We don't have to explain ourselves. Um, One of the things that I think, and we also don't have to puff up, like, I'm not going to explain myself,
Right.
like there is that middle ground of I can give a polite no, and then I can let my behavior speak for itself and be congruent and consistent with who I'm discovering that I am, and who I want to be. One of the things that I think is important that we remember, that our inclination to our inclination to explain ourselves, it is a bit of a trauma response. The thought behind that is, well, if I explain to you why I'm not fixing the casserole, then you won't be disappointed and you won't get mad at me and we won't have conflict. And so I'm just going to keep explaining of how I've been so busy and how I'm tired and my wrist is hurting and it just takes so much time. And I hope you understand. I hope like that over explaining is trying to manage the other person's reaction and expectations so that nothing bad happens to us, right? Like that's kind of the mindset behind it. But we actually don't have to do that. We don't have to explain. We don't have to manage somebody else's expectations of us. We don't have to manage somebody else's reaction. That's their suitcase to carry. That's their responsibility. And we can have a polite no and have congruent actions after that.
Wow.
No
You
is a
brought up,
complete
yeah,
sentence. That's what we always
that's
say.
you
No.
always say that, and it's such a it's so true. And
Yeah.
it getting over that, just trying to explain ourselves. But the way that you just said to us how we're just trying to keep them from being mad at us. Boy, am I guilty of that one. I mean, quite a bit. And you brought up Brene Brown, and you studied The Rising Strong. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm a big Brene Brown fan. I discovered her work maybe 12 years ago, kind of before she really became, kind of hit the stage, so to speak. And her work on shame resilience and recognizing our own shame-based thinking, learning to identify where that comes from, that really digesting the truth that we are worthy, not because of what we do, but because we were born worthy of love and connection. I'm just a huge fan. Her Rising, for those who have not read the book Rising Strong, it is really excellent in learning how to um, move forward after a big fall. And a big fall could be a big disappointment, a mistake, a failure, a loss, but how to move forward when we have fallen in the dirt, so to speak, and learning to identify. She says, "What is the story I'm telling myself? What is the story I'm telling myself about the big fall, the big mistake, about the disappointment? What is the story that I'm telling myself about myself, and is it true?" And really getting very clear on what it is that we tell ourselves, and what are the lies that we are believing, what are the facts of the situation, where do we need more information, and just learning to recover from falls. It is just a wonderful, wonderful book, so applicable to anyone and everyone, no matter your life stage.
Really,
It
all of her
changes.
books are really
Yeah.
Yeah.
great. Daring Greatly is wonderful. I
Yeah.
mean, she's really I love when she talks about the fact that if you look for external reasons to not have value, to not be worthy, you will find them.
Oh, for sure.
And
Mhm.
I think for women, it's so easy for us to say, well, like you said, oh, I'm not worthy. Like I need to find external reasons to validate this. So, in line with that, you talk about facing change with confidence. How can
Mhm.
women find that confidence to face maybe some changes or setting boundaries that they're going to do in their life?
Yeah, because we are going to face a lot of change. And there are kind of two ways that you can think about facing change and preparing your mind for facing change. There's there's the one route of um, trying to think differently about the circumstances that you're facing. Like, this isn't going to be too bad. Um, Maybe it will be better than I think, et cetera, et cetera. And that can be very helpful. But I really encourage people to think not so much about what it is that's in front of me, what is the change that's in front of me, because really we can't necessarily control that. I encourage people to really focus on this one very small sentence of "I can." I can. I can face this. This may be hard and this may be not fun at all. And I can. This is going to be a stressful season and I can. And really cultivating that belief of "and I can." Like, two things can be true. This is going to be brutal and I'm dreading it and it's going to be stressful and I feel like it's not going to be fun, and I can. Both of those things can be true. And so I think it's really important to cultivate that self-efficacy, that belief of "I can," because we don't actually know if it's going to be okay, and we can tell ourselves it's going to be okay, but we don't actually know. It could actually be horrible, right? Like it could be. And so you're putting how you handle it based on the outcome, which is most likely out of your control. And so instead, you're focusing on what I can control. I can't control this change. I can't control the news the doctor's going to give me. I can't control the prognosis. I can't even control how Thanksgiving's going to go. But I can. I can do anything for 2 hours. I can show up for another doctor's appointment. I can't, right? And so I think developing that I can voice and that I can belief is so, so important in helping us move through change. And we don't develop that voice and that belief as a way of negating how hard it is over here. It is holding up both things. This is hard and I can.
That's, just whatever you have control of, which isn't much,
Right.
it isn't a lot that you have control of. Another thing that I know that you touch on, and we hear from a lot of women at this time of life, is friendships, especially
Yeah.
if you've moved, especially if you've gone through a divorce or some kind of, or a spouse's
Your
death,
kids left and all
your
their
kids
friends,
left. Yeah,
families
you're
left
not
too.
making friends with kids at school's parents anymore. What are some advice? Because we do hear that a lot from people about friendships.
Oh yeah, adult friendship is challenging. And again, this is one of those things that no one ever prepares us for. No one ever prepares us that when you get into midlife or, eh, friendships are going to be harder to come by, harder to form. People are, there's no forewarning of that. But adult friendship is hard for a variety, for all the reasons that y'all just said. People move, uh people's roles change, life stages change, etc. I think one of the things when it comes to adult friendship, we have to be so protective of is that comparison trap, because it is so easy to go on social media and to feel like every female is on a girls trip but you. And it is so easy to fall down that spiral and to, within minutes, to feel alone and lonely and unwanted and rejected. And so I think we have to be very careful about that comparison trap. I think we have to remember that just in this stage of life, we probably aren't going to have as large of a social network, as large of a social group as we did in our 20s. Just that just is one of the things that happens over time. Our friendship circles shrink for a variety of reasons. People move, people get busy, people have other responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera. But a shrinking friendship circle does not necessarily mean that you are doing something wrong or that there's something wrong with you. I think also we do have to remember that we have to show up, and this kind of goes against the grain of what we were saying earlier of like boundaries and focus on yourself and your personal growth and what works for you. But we do have to show up, right? We have to show up sometimes, even when we don't want to show up. Like, if you want people to come to your birthday dinner, then you need to go to other people's birthday dinners, even if you're tired. And it's that fine line of, yes, I have to take care of myself, but if I want relationships require investment. And so that means that I have to invest. Um, and I have to put myself out there and I have to be willing to be vulnerable, which means I might have to show up to places where I don't know a lot of people or I don't know everyone that's going to be there super well. But I'm going to go in with the mindset of I want to connect and and so, but it's very, very, it's very challenging. It's very challenging. And again, no one ever warns us.
No, no,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
One way women can connect is going on retreats. And I know you talk
Yes.
about retreats. Can you talk about the retreats that you do and how women can find out more information?
Yes. So I, over the past several years, have held weekend retreats focused on really digesting and believing and securing your self-worth, securing that belief in your self-worth, learning about shame and learning about shame resilience, learning what are those negative thoughts and what are the lies in those negative thoughts? What is the truth that I need to remember? What is the truth that I need to digest? What is the truth that I need to discover that maybe no one ever taught me? And these retreats are so great. They're a Saturday and a Sunday, and we just kind of walk through a whole journey of recognizing what is the origin of some of the negative beliefs in our lives, and what is the life that I want to create, that I am ready to step into. I also speak at a lot of retreats that other people are holding. Churches and women's organizations and corporate groups and so forth and so on. But I think retreats are a wonderful tool for self-care, of just that 2 days, 3 days, if it's a really long retreat, of investing in yourself, really kind of blocking everything else out and spending time learning and growing and unpacking the suitcases that you have been carrying along. Retreats are just so good for the soul, so good for the spirit.
And
And
they're
then
on
you
your
can,
website?
Yes, they are on my website. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Okay,
and you can
which
meet other people there. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. It's so
Exactly, which we were
great.
just talking about connecting. So we'll have the links in our show notes on ways to get in touch with you. But Mazi Robinson, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about the midlife transition and all that comes with it. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.